We've got a few questions from our readers.
Awesome.
My friend Jude in Hamilton wants to know, what was the most challenging project you have worked on technically, and how did you resolve those challenges?
I would say that the toughest shoot I've ever done is we walked by the picture of the underwater in Komodo.
Yep, the mural.
Of the coral wall. That logistically was a crazy project because we were working in super crazy tides where you can get swept out. In fact, 2 weeks before we were there, a Singaporean female diver was swept away and never found again. So there are like 8, 9, 10 knot, like currents that would come. And so there was somebody spotting each one of us, and there was 6 of us working underwater and 6 spotting. So we had 12 divers. We had a whole boat that I'd rented. So it was a week to make that picture. So that was logistically, and then Jim, who is my field manager and producer and helps me get all these things done, was up top on the deck. And as we would come up, we would give the images to him and he would slice them together. So the big mural took about 200 images and we had to make sure we had it. And we did it over 4 dives over days. So that was my most complex, I think. But there have been other ones where security is very difficult. Port Harcourt, where pilots and helicopter pilots were regularly kidnapped and they charged $250,000 US to get them back. We actually had kidnap insurance at that time on that shoot, and then we had to try and figure out how to get out to the Niger Delta oil fields, and that was challenging too. So logistics, are really, and the technical things and everything's got to work, and the light has to work and the time of year has to work. So.
Wow, how long would it take to set up a shoot like that?
Most of my,
working a year in advance, I would guess.
Yeah, most of my shoots, if I basically have to work, like if I'm shooting for 3 weeks, it's usually 4 to 5, sometimes 6 months of research, development.
Do you have a vision and then you're just chipping away at how to make it happen?
Yeah, how to make it happen, yeah.
Wow, that's incredible. My friend Ian in Waterloo has asked, which elements of your shot, so settings and technical support, are the most important for ensuring the success of a desired image?
Well, interestingly enough, that I came out of the world of large format photography. So, 4x5 and 8x10 negative was my chosen medium. So when I went over to digital, I really wanted that to feel as if it was done with the same technology.
Yeah.
And then I started doing aerial work in 2006. So I also wanted it to feel like, I shot this with an 8x10 camera, but I'm not on a tripod, I'm on a moving helicopter and it's bouncing around and it's, doing all kinds of things, and I'm shooting out of, and you can't get back to the exact same spot, so you have to shoot quite a bit with the door off, and you've got wind shear happening, and so, but I wanted the experience that when you're standing in front of the print, you think it was done in an analog way, and that it was done with an 8x10 camera, so you don't see the craziness. I'm not on a tripod anymore.
Yeah.
So that was really, critical to try and get all my technology, the stabilization and all that working, and to be able to compose from the air to really tight compositions. And then but before that is, what's the subject? What time of year does it look interesting? Because I'm usually doing landscapes. So is the fall better than the spring? What's the weather conditions like? Do I want it to be sunny? Do I want it to be inclement? Do I want it to be this? So all of that is a checklist. And then I'm looking at, because that gives me my color palette.
Yep.
If I'm there in the middle of summer and everything's green, it's not that interesting from the air. So I won't be there in the summer. So I'll wait for late fall, or I'll wait. So I'm usually actually shooting more in late fall and even wintertime when in areas that are desert, because I like the brown tones. I kind of, you don't see a lot of green in my pictures.
Yeah.
It comes up once in a while. Even the one that we had at the beginning was green, because I'm now looking.
So that is a bit of a rare sight from you.
But every year I'm doing a week where I do a tribute to nature. And I started as a nature photographer.
Yep.
Going out there and looking at landscapes, and then in about 1980, 81, I worked as a miner to put myself through school, and then I ended up by chance in an area in Pennsylvania, was the mining area, and I started photographing mines with my 4x5. Came back from that trip where I was doing landscape, and I went, these are actually more interesting, in a way that there's something to be said here that that story hasn't been told.
Yeah.
Whereas a lot of people have tackled the landscape.
Yeah.
And so that's where I decided that I was going to make a decision and start doing the man-altered landscapes or human-altered landscapes. So that was a really a big transition, and then over time moving to digital, and then over time moving to aerial.
Yeah, that's incredible. My friend Carol in Surrey, BC, says it would be off the charts to see In the Wake of Progress. I guess she didn't get to the Toronto viewing, but she wants to know, are there plans to have that work shown to a wider audiences? And is there a follow-up production on that
Well,
project?
In the Wake of Progress is currently showing in Venice. It will be till...
Take us to Venice, Ed. We can't all go.
It's going to be there till the second
All right, if
second
any one
week
of you is
January.
all going to Venice, then, you know.
Plus, it's the Biennale, so there's all kinds of art to look at.
Yeah,
so,
that's true.
and I highly recommend going to Venice. It's very fun.
Yeah.
Food's great.
Okay, good to know, good to know.
But the whole show that was in London is now there.
Right.
There is a hope to bring it back to Toronto at some point. But we're currently, after Venice, we're still negotiating with many venues, and it'll continue to travel. So hopefully we'll get to Vancouver.
Yeah, well, I understand it's quite a big show, so you need a big space for that.
Yeah, yeah.
That's, again, part of the challenge, is the right fit and the right timing and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, the show at the Saatchi Gallery had 93 60 by 80-inch prints,
Yeah.
14 15 by 30-foot murals, and a big room with In the Wake of Progress. So it was 3 shipping containers of material.
Take over the AGO, I think.
Yeah.
Get that amount of space.
We need a lot of space. We need a lot of
Yeah.
space. Yeah, yeah.
We do actually have some questions that I've just been told about. Victoria is asking about your work from China. What
From
were some,
China?
From China, yeah. What were some of the challenges and safety concerns while you were in China? And I guess, I'm not sure if it's the same person, but another question is, what was the most exhilarating project you've ever worked on?
Well, China posed a lot of issues, but they would pose more issues today. It's gotten far more
really?
draconian. But when this guy Noah Weinsweig, who I met back in 2000, and he became my main China fixer. He stopped doing that because it's become so hard. But the real challenge in China was that at first I went with a journalist visa, and then they wanted, with a tourist visa, and then they wanted a journalist visa.
Okay.
And once I got the journalist visa, then I always had to have a minder with me. So
Yeah.
then somebody's always with you, reporting back and making sure. So it became a little bit more restrictive once I couldn't kind of travel freely as a tourist. But I still managed to get most of what I wanted. But today, Noah says that if I went back to try and do the same project today, it would be about a tenth of what I shot would be available to me to shoot,
Right.
and it would probably cost 10 times more. And so I was there at that pocket when globalization was really ramped up, and it was like the growth rate was 10, 12% every year. All these factories were setting up, and people were there at that point. I think 130 million workers had come from the countryside into the big cities in Shenzhen and Guangzhou and Shanghai to start working there and to making all the products so it was probably the most interesting time, I think,
Yeah.
to be there. I mean, China still is pretty incredible, and if all the films and everything I've done, I've always gone back to China. So I've been to China probably 14 times.
Oh, wow.
And it's become, because if I'm looking at the human-altered landscape and large-scale industry, the dams that they built there, the cities that are built like overnight, just the scale of China. I mean, it's interesting, Canada's like 40 plus million. That's a small province in China that wouldn't even have a big seat at the table.
Yeah.
If you're 80 million and plus, you get a big seat at the table in Beijing. And it's like 1.4 billion. So like
It's overwhelming, like just overwhelming numbers for.
It's like
for us
when we
here.
think when we think in Canada that we've got a population problem, we don't.
Yeah.
We
got
got
some
a lot of space.
Yeah.
We're all crammed in on the 49th parallel a bit, but we're
Downtown
still.
Toronto's a different story.
Yeah, that's I think as a photographer, probably the most exhilarating shoot I've ever done is in 2000 and 2001. Before I did the China project, the shipbreaking project in Bangladesh, the scale of the taking down of these big oil tankers, the kind of madness of that, Mad Max place.
Yeah.
I just didn't think anything like that existed in the world.
How did you find that locate? How did you find it? that existed?
Well, Jim and I began, working together at that time, Jim Panu, and so he said, I saw these quarries in Rajasthan in a place called Makrana and India. So I'd never been to India. So he said, well, I've traveled it, I know how to navigate it. So we planned that. And then there was shipbreaking yards in a place called Alang in the Gujarat state. And we tried to get in there, but they were restricting photographers because there was a big smear campaign on the shipbreaking work that they were doing at the time. And they just said, photographers are persona non gratas around here. In fact, they were taking the cameras and opening them up and ripping the film out and taking film out of their bags and stuff. So we saw that. That was early days of these, like chats. We were at Lonely Planet, and we were going back and forth with travelers that were, it was called the Thorn Tree or something, where people can post, and we said, anybody around there? And we heard about that. So then somebody mentioned, hey, if you think there's another great place to go, it's in Bangladesh. So then we said, let's do a 10 days shoot in India, in Makrana, and then move over to, we went through Calcutta and then went into Bangladesh, into Dhaka, and then to Chittagong, where we did. And to me, that was seeing humanity at that level, seeing India and seeing Bangladesh, and photographing those shipbreaking yards still, to me, is one of the most extraordinary shoots I've ever been on. The images still kind of live on and are still haunting, and it's just seeing the.
Well, it's haunting as a viewer, and we weren't even there to sort of see the sights and smells and all the rest of it. It's just it's incredible.
Yeah, I often say when I came back, it's like stepping back into a Charles Dickens novel where he describes the satanic mills, but. It's 50 years later, and it's still here. And life was cheap. I mean, I think. The average, deaths was like 2 a day.
Wow.
And people were getting injured all the time, arms being lost, eyes being poked out. It was just, there was no human rights, at that time.
Have those conditions changed?
Well, it was interesting. When I got back, I wanted to use some of the sales, so I wrote a letter because all these welders who were cutting were not using glasses. They were just like squinting with cutting torches, right?
That's
and that means you burn your retina out, because that's all high, intensity light as you're cutting through a ship's hull. So I bought cutting glasses, like the special ones that are dark, for all 2,500 cutters. And then I had them distributed, I shipped them over, with our fixers there. They handed them all out at the coffee shops and with a letter from me saying, I'm the photographer that you guys saw, and I use my eyes every day, and if you don't wear these glasses, you won't be able to see your families after 5 or 10 years because your eyes are going to be ruined. So you should wear them, and when they wear out, tell your boss to get you a new pair. And then we tried to go back like in 2005 for a film, and they said, oh no, you're the guy who gave them that letter, and so they wouldn't let me back in.
Really?
Yeah, but apparently it made a difference. Apparently they now wore glasses, so. The cutting glasses.
Wow, some good change came from it.
I think so.
That's incredible. Someone else asks, you talked about working from helicopters. Do you use drones?
Absolutely. I think in the field of drones, I was in a very pioneering stage of it, again with Jim, who helps me with all things technical as well. We found a gentleman called Tab Fischow, who had a company called FreeFly. And he had a single helicopter with looks like a regular helicopter, but it had a gimbal on it that I could put my Hasselblad at that time I was using on it.
Because the weight of the camera would be
so we were
the
like
issue.
this big 6-foot helicopter would go off, and that's how I started shooting with a drone. That was in 2011. So before DJI or any of that was coming along. And then he evolved it and started doing this eight-armed Ultra drone, and so now. I've been using that, and I also use DJI, but I've been using drones literally from 2010 onwards. I've been working with them and getting my large format cameras up on them. So they've always managed like big technology. I have a drone operator that travels with me who I've been working with for 20 years, or at least 15 years, Mike. And he's like, the MacGyver. He can, fix anything. He's got enough spare parts. So, because when you're in these remote places,
you need someone with you.
You could be down. One little part, you're down. So you have to really be backed up on all of that stuff.
Yeah. We have a very, I guess, it's more of a technical question from John in Waterloo. What focal lengths of lens do you find that you have been using the most frequently?
Probably what every photographer almost uses, which is a slightly wide. So on the medium format cameras, I'm often in the 50 mil lens. So it'd be on a 35 millimeter camera, it'd be like a 35.
Okay.
And to me, it's like a nice natural, for doing landscape work, and the way the image throws off. It's not too wide, it doesn't stretch out the corners too much. At the same time, it gives you a nice open view of things. But I will work through a range of things, but I find that slightly wide lens is my go-to.
That's the sweet spot.
It is a sweet spot.
Nice. Amazing. I think that's all we have time for today, but thank you very much for
Thank
this
you.
behind the scenes
It was a real
tour.
pleasure.
Yeah, it was super fun to sort of see what goes on and meet all. I know that the folks at home cannot necessarily see everyone that is standing behind us, but there's a crew, and everybody's really awesome. So if you need any information, I know that there were messages sent in the chats, and I can send those around, and continue the conversation. People can email or come in person, and
Go
hopefully.
out there and make great pictures. If you need one made up for your walls,
Yeah,
we're here.
Exactly.
All right.
Get a frame too. It's all good.
It's all good. All right.
Anyway, good night, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for attending.